All right, so ready to dive deep into past life therapy. Today we're exploring this fascinating world with insights from Brian L. Weiss's book, A Cura a través de terapia de vidas pasadas.
Oh, this is a good one. And it really gets you thinking, about what recalling past lives could reveal, maybe even about your own healing and well-being.
Exactly. I mean, right off the bat, Weiss's own background is kind of what makes this so intriguing. He wasn't exactly, predisposed to this kind of thinking.
Not at all. You see, he was this very traditional psychiatrist, very left-brained. Actually, he even describes himself as a bit obsessive-compulsive, leaning heavily on established science.
So like parapsychology, past lives, reincarnation, all that stuff was met with a ton of skepticism,
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah, huge skepticism. I mean, you just have to look at his earlier work, like the biology of cholinergic function. That's hardcore science, a far cry from exploring the mysteries of consciousness, you know what I mean?
Totally. So we've got this super rational scientific mind, and then he meets Catherine, late 20s, New England Catholic, comfortable with her religion, not someone you'd picture being into like New Age stuff.
Right, but she was struggling, and I mean really struggling, with some intense stuff. Fears, phobias, panic attacks, the works. Depression, too, and these recurring nightmares that were just getting worse and worse.
And the thing is, she'd already done over a year of conventional psychotherapy.
Yeah.
It didn't help much at all.
Yeah, and that's what I find so interesting, because the book really emphasizes how intelligent and insightful Catherine was. Like, on paper, she should have been a perfect candidate for traditional therapy.
So what happened?
Well, Weiss starts incorporating hypnosis into his practice, and then, bam, during one of these sessions with Catherine, she just starts recalling a past life, vividly describes her existence as a woman in the Near East.
Whoa. What did Weiss think about that?
Oh, he was shocked, as you can imagine. Like, here's this staunch skeptic, and his patient is suddenly talking about a life from centuries ago. He remained skeptical, of course, but that was just the beginning.
Okay, so then what?
More past lives started coming up during these hypnosis sessions. An 18th century Spanish prostitute, a Greek woman, and so on.
And her symptoms.
That's the amazing part. They just vanished. Completely gone within a few months. No medication or anything. It was a radical, complete turnaround.
Okay, so that's going to shake even the most hardcore skeptic, right?
For sure, but there's more. I mean, the unusual experiences continued. Like, in one session, after reliving a death from a past life, Catherine describes floating above her own body. Then she's drawn to this bright spiritual light, a recurring feature of what she calls the in-between state.
Wow. So we're way beyond textbook psychiatry now.
All right. Definitely. And it gets deeper. In these in-between states, Catherine begins to relay messages from what she calls masters, and the central message is consistent. The purpose of life is to learn to love, to help others with love and compassion, and to do it selflessly without expecting anything in return.
And that message resonated with an experience that Weiss himself had. He describes visiting a community center in a poorer part of Rio de Janeiro, where he observed young women learning different skills. He was struck by their joy, their sense of empowerment. He also met a man named Geraldo, who, to Weiss, just embodied this spirit of Brazil through his selflessness.
It's amazing how those observations from everyday life started to align with these, seemingly out there accounts from Catherine.
Right. And it wasn't just Weiss exploring this territory. The intro to the book mentions a whole bunch of researchers like William Roll, Ken Ring, Bruce Grayson, and Melvin Morris, all delving into these extraordinary experiences of consciousness.
Exactly. I mean, even the author of the introduction shares personal experiences with deceased relatives, and they make a fascinating comparison to Sir Arnold Toynbee, the historian. He apparently attributed some of his insights to similar spontaneous experiences.
It's like these aren't just fringe ideas anymore, they're popping up everywhere.
Right. And what's fascinating is that this idea of learning to love as the most important thing, that comes up a lot in accounts of near-death experiences, too. So it's this recurring theme, this universal truth that seems to surface in these altered states of consciousness.
So this is where Weiss really becomes a pioneer. He takes these seemingly esoteric concepts and starts applying them as therapeutic tools. He basically brings techniques for, like, consciousness transformation to a wider audience, offering a way to address issues that might otherwise take years of conventional therapy.
It's important to remember, though, that this isn't just about suggestibility or anything like that. The book makes it clear that the people undergoing past life therapy aren't gullible. In fact, their recollections often include super specific details: names, dates, places, all kinds of stuff that later helps with their healing.
Like with Catherine. And the book argues that the level of detail in these recollections really makes you question whether they're just made up.
Totally. But maybe even more profound than, say, symptom relief is the very idea of past life recall. It implies that consciousness, who we are at our core, survives physical death. That's a huge implication to wrap your head around.
Definitely. So let's talk about the mechanics of remembering. How do we actually access these past lives?
Well, the book explains that people generally retain their current consciousness while tapping into these past experiences. It's like you might remember being alive in, say, 1900, but you also know that you're currently building a pyramid in ancient Egypt. It's like your present self is observing and experiencing a past self.
So it's not like completely losing yourself in the past. You're still you, just with access to these other memories.
Exactly, which is why someone under hypnosis, recalling, say, a medieval battle, might recognize people from that past life who they also know in their current life. It's like these souls keep encountering each other across different lifetimes.
That's wild. And the impact on current symptoms can be pretty immediate, right?
Oh, yeah. The book says when the past life memories directly connect to current issues, the improvement is often fast and significant. It's as if bringing that root cause to the surface just releases the suffering.
The book even brings up compulsive exhibitionism as an example of something that could be rooted in past lives.
Yeah, for you to think about how deep these past life influences might go. They also talk about the interlife state, which is that time between lives, a time for reflection, understanding the lessons learned, maybe even getting guidance from spiritual beings.
To make all this a bit more concrete, the book includes excerpts from one of Catherine's past lives, this time in Egypt. She remembers an epidemic spread through the water that killed her father and brother. She describes working with priests to prepare bodies for burial. She even remembers sensory details, like a particular smell and a purple fruit they use for medicinal purposes. She calls it tennis.
Those little details, like the tennis fruit, they make it all so much more vivid and believable, don't they? Catherine also talks about her last day in that life, then this feeling of moving into darkness after death and then entering a warm light. Powerful stuff.
It really is. And what's interesting is that people often recall these death scenes without being super distressed. The therapist can even guide them to view it from a detached perspective. The book emphasizes that the therapist can always stop the regression, and the person can choose not to experience the death scene fully.
So it's all about feeling safe and in control. Now, here's something I find strange. There's been research on kids spontaneously remembering past lives, like Dr. Ian Stevenson's work, but not so much on the therapeutic benefits of past life regression in adults.
That is weird. You'd think there'd be more research on that, especially with all these compelling experiences. Right.
Right, like it's not just Vice. So the book delves into the history of reincarnation. Turns out belief in it goes way back in both Judaism and Christianity.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So in Judaism, reincarnation, or Gilgul, was a core belief for thousands of years. It was only around the mid-19th century, with modernization and all that, that it started to fade in some communities. But it's still strong in Orthodox and Hasidic circles, and it's central to Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism.
Fascinating. What about Christianity?
Okay, so there were early references to reincarnation in the New Testament, but they were removed in the 4th century by Emperor Constantine. Seems like it was seen as a threat to the stability of the empire.
Why is that?
Well, the thinking was, if people believe they have multiple lives, they might not take earthly laws so seriously. Why worry about a single judgment day if you've got eternity to get things right?
That's actually a pretty clever strategy.
Right. And then, in the 6th century, the Second Council of Constantinople officially declared reincarnation a heresy. It's like, bam, shut that whole idea down.
No.
The book suggests this is more about politics than genuine spiritual understanding.
So, knowing all that, it's pretty brave of Weiss to publish his experiences. I mean, there was a good chance he'd be ridiculed, ostracized professionally.
Absolutely. But he felt it was his responsibility to share these tools for healing and growth. He'd seen firsthand how transformative past life regression could be, and the response when Many Lives, Many Masters came out was actually really positive. He got tons of letters, many from other therapists who'd seen similar things but were afraid to talk about them.
It just goes to show sometimes you got to trust your own experience, keep an open mind, even when it challenges what everyone else believes.
For sure. The book even talks about psychic experiences in general, like this story about a guy who won the lottery based on a dream from his dead daughter.
That's crazy. And I guess it all kind of ties in with near-death experiences, right?
Totally. You see, NDEs have common threads. Out-of-body experiences, a bright light or a spiritual figure, music or sounds, moving through a tunnel towards the light, no pain, immense peace and joy. A lot of people don't want to come back.
Sounds intense.
It is. And there's often a life review, too. Dr. Raymond Moody's work is mentioned, along with this weird thing about disembodied hands passing through solid objects. Really makes you question what we know about consciousness.
For sure. And Dr. Melvin Morse studied NDEs in kids, right? What did he find?
Well, their experiences were very similar to those of adults, leaving their bodies, going towards the light, the whole deal. And the impact on them was huge. They became more mature, had better relationships, and were less likely to get into trouble later on.
So it's not just a fleeting experience. It can really change a person's life.
Absolutely. And then you have Dr. Kenneth Ring, who documented cases where kids actually overheard medical staff talking during surgery, even though they were supposedly unconscious.
That's nuts. It's like the evidence is piling up, even if we don't totally understand it yet.
Exactly. So going back to past lives, we need to talk about the nature of memory. Like, how reliable are these recollections?
Right. I mean, are they literal or are they more like dreams?
That's a good question. The book says it's kind of like remembering your childhood. You might get some details wrong, like the exact color of the wallpaper in your old room, but the core memory, the essence of it, is accurate.
So maybe some details in past life memories are a bit fuzzy, but the overall experience is true.
That's the idea. And it connects to this concept that memories, feelings, even unresolved stuff from past lives can influence us in the present, especially early on.
Like we carry these imprints from our past lives into this one.
Exactly. And the book has tons of examples of physical symptoms that were seemingly relieved through past life regression, like Dana's hip pain that was traced back to a stabbing in a past life.
Whoa. And there was Carol, whose migraines were connected to being beaten to death?
Yeah, and Trisha, who had TMJ pain and headaches from a spear injury in a past life, and Alberto's back pain from a fatal battle wound.
It's like our bodies are holding on to these memories.
Right. And even allergies and breathing problems are explored, like Betty and Lacey, whose allergies and asthma seemed linked to past life deaths involving lung damage or suffocation. Lacey was also terrified of water because she drowned in a past life.
Makes sense. And there's that case of Elizabeth, also known as Nora, who had asthma and a fear of suffocating.
Oh yeah, that one's wild. She recalled a past life as a deaf-mute factory worker who died in a fire in 1879. It's like the details were so specific, she even wore leg braces in that life.
It's also interconnected, isn't it?
Yeah.
The mind and the body, and how healing those past traumas can bring relief in the present.
Absolutely. The book talks about Jack, whose gout, anger, and fear of flying were all alleviated after past life regressions, and Selma, whose ulcer got better after she remembered being shot in the stomach in a past life.
Wow. And there's that story from Dr. Robert Jarman about a patient who spontaneously regressed to a medieval past life.
Yeah, and her gynecological issue was the same one that caused her death in that past life. The crazy part is, she was Jewish in this life, but recited a Catholic act of contrition during the regression.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
But it's like her subconscious or her soul or whatever you want to call it still held that memory.
Right, and her symptoms cleared up afterwards. It really shows how powerful this stuff can be. The realization that we don't die with our bodies, that there's more to us than this physical form, that can be incredibly healing.
Definitely. And there's even a story about a woman whose breast lumps vanished after a regression meditation where she experienced a healing white light. I mean, who knows for sure, but the timing is pretty suggestive.
Right. The power of the mind is undeniable. Speaking of connections, the book also talks about how past life relationships can affect our current ones. Dan, for instance, saw past lives with Mary Lou, and there was this recurring pattern of violence and betrayal between them.
Whoa. So they kept meeting and hurting each other across lifetimes.
That's what it seems like. And Martine, who had a tough relationship with Hal, regressed to a childhood memory of being locked in a closet. It mirrored these past life feelings of being trapped and powerless, but understanding that helped her change her perspective and behavior, which improved their relationship.
It's like we're working through these patterns from lifetime to lifetime.
Yeah, and the book even suggests that we choose our families and life circumstances before we're born, often reuniting with the same souls in different roles. Like, Hope recognized a past life exploiter in her current son, Steve.
That's heavy. And adopted kids have recalled past lives with their adoptive parents too, suggesting these bonds go beyond blood ties.
Right. And it's not always about full-blown regression.
Mm.
Sometimes just visualization can help. Like Betsy, who visualized her dead dad as a brother in a spiritual garden. It helped her understand him, forgive him, and feel closer to him.
There's also the concept of soulmates, which I think a lot of people are familiar with.
Yeah, these recurring connections across lifetimes. And it's not just romantic, it could be close friends, family, whoever. The book tells the story of a woman who is devastated after her fiancé died, but she found comfort in the idea that they might reunite in another life.
That's beautiful. And then there's Anthony and Ariel, who remembered being separated in a past life during Hannibal's time because of some tragic accident with liquid fire.
Mm.
And guess what? They ended up getting married in this life.
It's like their love spans centuries.
Yeah,
Amazing, right?
totally. The book also compares past life therapy to inner child work. It's like by revisiting those past traumas, we can give our past selves the compassion and healing they need. Like Linda, who experienced severe abuse as a child, went through regressions to happier lives, and it helped her understand her anger and forgive her father.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And there was Lorraine, who had this choking sensation that turned out to be connected to a past life where she was hanged. Recalling that helped her work through feelings about her dad's early death and even reduced her fear of intimacy.
Wow. It's like everything's connected. And then there's Mercedes, who remembered a past life as a mistreated servant. It helped her understand why she didn't trust women and why her relationship with her abusive father was so complicated.
Yeah, it's like those family patterns can carry over from one lifetime to the next.
The book also talks about weight issues, which is interesting. It suggests that obesity can sometimes be a protective mechanism stemming from past life traumas. Like Kathy regressed to lives where she was extremely thin due to hardship, and Dee had weight issues that might have been linked to a fear of being attractive to men.
The point is, if obesity is rooted in past trauma, addressing that trauma through regression can lead to more permanent weight loss. Like Sharon, whose obesity was connected to childhood sexual abuse that got triggered by her husband's betrayal. It's different from just using traditional hypnotherapy for weight loss, which often doesn't have lasting results.
Makes sense. And then there's addiction. The book frames it as a way to escape pain, to suppress memories or emotions, like a form of slow suicide even.
Yeah, and it suggests that past life therapy can be especially helpful for addicts after they've detoxed, because it helps them deal with the underlying trauma. Like Sarah, who overcame alcoholism by understanding her self-destructive patterns across lifetimes and learning to forgive herself and others.
That's powerful. The book also compares the principles of past life healing to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Interesting connection. And, death is another big theme. The book talks about how understanding past lives can actually reduce the fear of death. Like Leonard, who had an out-of-body experience and said, dying isn't a loss.
Reassuring in a way. And then there's Matthew, who encountered a healing angel, and Sylvia, who had an out-of-body experience and connected with this warm light.
Yeah, and there's that story about a couple who saw a luminous apparition of the wife's dead father. Even a skeptical psychiatry professor was shaken by his dad's dream about his dying brother.
It's like these experiences, even if they seem out there, really make you question what we know about death.
Absolutely. And a big theme is growth. Remembering past lives often shows how much we've evolved, how our strengths and talents carry over. Like Martha accessed happy past lives to cultivate happiness in the present and heal from her dad's death. Rena had a vision of her dead husband acknowledging her beliefs about the afterlife, which brought her peace.
That's beautiful. And for people grieving, past life perspectives can be so comforting. Philip, who'd lost his kids, connected with them in a past life during a regression. It gave him solace, knowing that their love transcended death.
And the book talks about how we can meet the same souls in different relationships across lifetimes. So it's not like we lose people forever.
That's a nice thought. But, not everyone's open to this stuff, right?
Of course not. The book tells a story about a woman at a lecture who was totally against hypnosis, called it sinful, and it uses the example of Galileo, whose theories were initially rejected, to show how our understanding of new ideas evolves over time.
It takes a while for people to catch up sometimes.
It does. The book also shares Anita's experience of the interlife, which she describes as this perfect alignment of mind and heart, this pure love that released her fears and awakened her healing abilities.
Wow. And then there's Beth, who basically reviewed her life plan with a guide in some library-like setting. She learned that she'd chosen her current challenges for spiritual growth, The book suggests that harder lives actually indicate a stronger soul, while easier ones are more like rest periods. It's like we're all here to learn and grow at our own pace.
Right. And it's interesting how Weiss's own past life memory, where he was a temple priest examining plants, gave him the courage to teach past life regression, despite his fear.
Yeah.
It shows how these experiences can empower us.
Definitely. And the book contrasts the persecution of figures like Galileo with a current shift towards inner exploration and the blurring lines between science and spirituality. Like they mentioned Western scientists working with a Chinese Taoist master to understand Qigong.
It's like the world is opening up to new possibilities.
Right. And the book emphasizes that we're all divine beings and that remembering that can unlock our true potential. And it's not just about abstract concepts. Past life insights can have a real impact on your life. Blair, for example, accessed a past life as a strong, independent man, and it empowered her in her current marriage. Hank had a regression that brought him a sense of direction and contentment, even though nothing outwardly changed.
And Felice, who remembered a past life as an isolated, deformed girl, finally understood why she had low self-esteem and was afraid of the dark. The book also talks about how Hank realized there was a purpose behind everything that had happened in his life.
It's like these experiences can provide so much clarity and peace.
They can, and there's a whole section on overcoming creative blocks. Trisha's past life as a tax collector helped her understand her current writer's block, and a famous musician rediscovered his creativity by remembering a past life in 19th century Ireland where he suppressed his musical talent due to family pressure and died regretting it.
So sad. But it's like those past experiences can hold us back if we don't address them.
For sure. And for unexplained fears, the book gives examples like Dr. Jarman's patient, whose fear of the full moon was linked to a past life trauma as a soldier. Ruth had nightmares about being trapped, which stemmed from a past life imprisonment. And Alice's panic attacks were traced back to past lives where she was buried alive and trapped during a bombing.
It's amazing how these things can manifest.
It is.
Yeah.
And even hidden talents can surface. Like Karen, a photographer who realized her fear of public speaking came from a past life where her voice was silenced.
So powerful. It's like past lives are a part of us, whether we're aware of them or not.
Exactly. And the book ends with Weiss talking about a spontaneous experience he had while driving, this overwhelming feeling of peace, joy, and detached love. He says the main thing is to learn and to love.
Beautiful. But what about people who can't access past lives, even if they try?
The book addresses that too, like Armando, who had these deep meditative states but couldn't remember past lives. His guide told him those memories would come once he let go of his fears, especially his fear of people.
So it's not always a simple process. There might be blocks to work through.
Right. But the book offers some techniques for exploring past lives on your own, like keeping a dream journal, doing dream role-playing, meditating, reflecting on your talents and fears, noticing your attractions and aversions, using free association with emotionally charged words, and even trying the faces technique, where you look for subtle changes in facial features in dim light.
So there are things people can do at home to tap into this stuff.
Absolutely. Then the book says the ultimate reward is this deep contentment and understanding that comes from realizing how vast you are, beyond your current ego and personality. It's about connecting with your true immortal self.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we've explored past life therapy as a way to heal, to understand relationships, to overcome fears, and to gain a bigger perspective on life and death. It's all about recognizing that consciousness continues, that we grow and learn across lifetimes.
And we encourage you to explore some of these ideas, maybe try some of the techniques. You never know what you might discover.
Exactly. And here's something to think about. If past lives really do influence us, what echoes from those lives might be shaping your choices and relationships right now? It's worth pondering. Until next time.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.